Hey everybody, it's Chris, and I thought I would show you how I pour my coasters when I'm doing just a regular like dirty cup pour. And I've already shown you how I do a puddle pour, but this is how the majority of my coasters that I pour are probably like this. So I use the 1 ounce medicine cups. I buy these off of Amazon. They're usually, I watch until there's a deal and I wait until they're about $3 for 100. Sometimes they're $6 for 100, but I like to get a deal on everything, so I wait around until they're $3. And a sleeve of 100 will last forever. But I'm just going to squirt a little bit of the silicone WD-40 spray in there because I want all of my paint to release. I don't want to have like a puddle in the bottom of the cup, but I just want enough so that it releases the paint so I don't waste my paint. So I'm just going to do just a little bit of a squirt. And that was probably a little bit too much. So I'll just tap it out a little bit. And then I'm going to set each one of these cups on top of the coaster so I can pour my paint. And I'm just kind of doing like a little half squirt. And that one, again, has a little too much. It's kind of a generous giver, so it's a little difficult to do just a little bit. But if you have too much in there, just pounce it out onto your plastic. So the colors I'm using tonight are black, Payne's gray, white, and my custom silver. My custom silver is Liquitex silver, yes, Liquitex silver paint, and then the Rustoeleum glitter paint, and that's all mixed with my pouring medium. So I'm going to start with the Payne's gray in all of my cups. I really love Payne's gray. I think it's a really neat color, and I also think that it gives some really neat effects. And then I'm kind of going to work light to dark. So we'll go with some white in here. Will be my next color, and I kind of tend to layer my paints into my cup. I do want to do a couple of layers so that I get colors throughout that are like, so that they're evenly, I guess, distributed on the coaster. This is just my black paint. This is the Flow Acrylic from Michaels. And then next is my custom silver, because if you watched any of my videos, you know that I love to have a little bit of sparkle in everything. And then I'm just gonna go back with the Payne's gray and layer each one of the cups with Payne's gray. And then we'll do some more white. The white is another one that gives some really neat effects too in your pourings. I find that the Flow Acrylic white is a really nice, it'll do some really neat things and neat effects on your pourings, whether it's on a canvas or whether it's on coasters. And then back in with my silver again. And I want my cups to be fairly full. It generally takes most of the 1 ounce of paint to cover the coasters. And that way you won't have to fight with trying to get the edges covered. And then I'm gonna do the white again. And then I may go back, we'll just keep going with the black. And then I'll probably do a little squirt of silver down the center of it, just to make sure that we've got silver in there. And I'm just gonna kind of squish it down in there. And I think that kind of helps to mix up my paints as well. And then I'm just gonna flip each one of these coasters, or each one of these cups over. I tend to pick up and then flip it. You can see that I've put painter's tape on the back of my coasters. And these are just 4x4 tiles from from Home Depot or from Menards. And I put the white painter's tape on because these will also get a coat of resin when I'm finished. And then before I started the video tonight, I just wiped those off with an alcohol wipe, just to get any residue or oils that may have possibly been on the tiles to begin with. You can see that because I used the WD-40 spray that my paint is releasing from the cup, which is exactly what I wanted. And now I usually kind of pull it down to the corner and then I tip it and pull it off the edge. And then I'll take whatever paint I have left over in the cup and kind of touch the edges of my corners here so that those are already helping to get covered. And you can see that there's a lot of sparkle in here. There's already some neat things kind of going on with the paint. Got a couple bubbles, but that's all right. Those will work out. And then I like to pull all of my cups and kind of let them do what they're gonna do. And if you find that you pulled your cup down too far, just go ahead and pick it up and tip it a little bit. It's no problem at all. So I'll just pull all of my cups and then let that sit there and kind of do its little thing. And then I'll go back and start tipping on the first one that I pulled off of that I pulled the paint off of. I love that Payne's gray because it has just a little bit of a blue tint to it. And I just think it's such a pretty color. And this seems to be a very popular color combination for me when I do craft shows. So I'm trying to start stocking up on my next craft show. So I want to make sure that I have this color in stock because I think I could easily sell probably 3 or 4 sets of coasters in these colors because they're just a nice neutral color. So I'm just going to pick this guy up. You can see that I've already got my corners kind of started there. So I'm just going to go over to the left corner so that I can kind of start tipping that towards that corner to get that corner covered. And then hopefully I'm not out of the shot of the camera. And then I'll come down here to the left corner. And I just want the paint to ease off and start to coat my sides. And it will flow off. I don't necessarily like the little rings that it creates on the corners. So a lot of times I'll try to tip those off so that I don't have little tree rings on the corners. I'm okay with it being on a little bit, but I don't like it to be on all 4 corners. So that's looking pretty good. I think we've got all the edges pretty well. I'm just gonna let that paint flow over and then I'll come back and check to make sure I've got all my edges covered. And I'll just let that paint kind of flow down and do what it's gonna do. You can see that it's already doing some pretty neat stuff. We'll go to this one next, and there again, just gonna tip towards all of my corners. I don't want to paint, or excuse me, I don't want to tip all of my paint off, but I do want to make sure that everything's coated. So you kind of tend to go to a corner, come back towards the center, and then go to your other corners. So I apologize if you weren't able to see that very well, but sometimes you kind of have to do some severe tipping. So there again, this will continue to change. In fact, you guys will probably see it changing on these guys as I do the 2 bottom ones too, because it kind of tends to change pretty fast. So now we'll just go to this one, tip to my corner, come back. Since the weight of my paint is at the top, I'll just grab that other corner, and then I'm gonna go to the bottom right and then come back to the bottom left. And there again, kind of some severe tipping so that I can get that corner covered. And then just let go and kind of touch up on my corners. It's looking pretty good. It's a very pretty color combo. I can see why people like it because it kind of goes with a lot of different things, no matter what your colors are in your house. All right, and then this is the last one. You can see some cells already starting there. So we'll just tip up towards this corner, come back, tip down to that corner. The other thing that I like to do too is these are the 4 1/4 inch tiles for coasters, but I also like to do a 6 by 6 tile for a trivet so that there's a matching set. And the 6 by 6 is a really fun size to do too. If you're new to pouring, coasters are a great way to start. They're not intimidating. It's a small surface. If you really absolutely hate what you've done, you can rinse it off and let it dry and start all over again. I mean, you don't have to, you know, keep what you have on there. I just dropped on that one because my fingers were a little gooey. That's all right. I'm just gonna pick it up and see if I can tip part of that little fisheye off that I put in there. Make it look a little bit better. All right, that looks good. So I'm just gonna go ahead and check my edges and make sure that everything's good. And I've got these sitting on plastic cups, so it's very easy for me just to kind of turn them and so that I don't have to completely pick them up and mess up the edges that do look good. And these will dry for, I usually try to let them dry at least 2 weeks. I admit that I am not very patient when it comes to letting things dry. I am usually doing really well if I let them set for a week before I resin them, because I really think the resin just makes them look like they do right now. It makes them look wet again, and it really brings out the sparkle and additives that I've put in my metallic paint. So I think it really does make things look really cool when they have their coat of resin on. So generally I wait about a week, and then I will put my resin on, and then that sits for, it has to sit 30 days to be heat safe to the 475 degrees. But I know there's a lot of people out there that will tell you don't do anything with them for a month, and do what's comfortable for you. I personally am not very patient. I have not had issues with any of the coasters that I've poured so far. I've been pouring coasters for probably about 5 months now, and I have some of the first coasters that I poured and I didn't have any discoloration. I didn't have any mold coming through, but I live in Iowa, and sometimes it kind of can be a little bit dry in the winter time, which I feel kind of helps the situation a little bit, and maybe they cure a little bit easier when the humidity is lower. But I've not had any problems by just waiting a week before I get ready to pour those, or excuse me, before I get ready to resin them. So you can see that there's already some stuff that's happening on the surface. You can see some of the cell action. That's some of that Payne's gray plus the white. I can see that I've got bubbles on the paint. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use my butane torch and pop those real quick. And you'll see some more stuff pop up as I heat it. For some reason, the white seems to kind of pop up when I heat it, and I think that's what's actually got the bubbles in it, which I'm not really sure why, because it's not like I shook the paint before I started. But so you'll see some of that stuff kind of come through, and these will continue to change as they dry. I really love how this color combination looks when it's done, and I think it has some really neat reactions, and you can kind of see the chains of cells and kind of the veining that go throughout. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and thanks again for joining me. Bye-bye.